Chapter 22. Of course not, Hannibal laughed, it's just that you're special, honey. Siddle really didn't like this way of calling her, honey, so naturally she didn't bother asking why she was special. Besides, she wasn't a curious person. If you're interested in psychology, the man holding the pen pondered for a moment, I have some research in this field, would you be willing to study and discuss it with me? In other words, if Siddle wanted to learn something from him, he could use the excuse of treating Siddle as an excuse to keep her. Siddle imagined the days she would have to spend with Hannibal every day. At first, she expressed that she was very touched, then firmly refused, no, thank you, uncle. She didn't want to have to face Hannibal's cheesy way of addressing her every day, and the radar in her head was always blaring alarms. All right, Hannibal sighed regretfully and began writing the test report. The tip of the pen made a light friction sound on the paper. Siddle obediently sat on the chair waiting for this university professor to give his conclusion about her mental illness. Hannibal was not shy about writing a psychological research report in front of his own patient. After Siddle saw the smooth and beautiful handwriting on the paper as well as the content on it, her mood was extremely wonderful. In short, the content of this report was a disguised compliment. The person who wrote the report did not hesitate to praise her in every aspect from many professional angles and used many different technical terms. Even with Siddle's psychological qualities, she couldn't help but feel a little shocked at this moment. Therefore, when she left the office and saw Hannibal handing the report to Ray, Siddle couldn't help but have a strange illusion as if she had made a deal with Hannibal. But Ray was not the only one in the living room, at this time there was a young man sitting beside Ray. Seeing Hannibal come out, the young man hurriedly stood up, after awkwardly greeting Hannibal, he fixed his eyes on Siddle. The little girl had skin as white as ice, a small face with delicate features, long soft blonde hair hanging down over her shoulders, her eyes were as clear as crystal set in her fair face. Ah! Hello! The young man with a pale face and a voice like someone out of breath suddenly lit up his eyes, gave Siddle an embarrassed smile and reached out to shake her hand. I'm Mason Verger, you can call me Mason, uncle. Siddle was startled, instinctively took a few steps back. The strange man's eye sockets were dark, his face was pale, as if he had been soaked in a rice bag for 3 days and 3 nights before. There was a strange feeling in her heart. Before she could think, she heard Hannibal beside her speak in a cold voice. His calm tone was completely different from the gentleness when he spoke to her in the study. Brother Verger, your condition is not stable yet, don't get too agitated. Mason scratched his head, as if remembering something, and quickly turned back. Mrs. Christian, is this your daughter? I'm sorry, she's so cute. It's been a long time since I've seen such a beautiful and touching little girl. Children are all angels. He muttered in praise, turned back to look at Siddle with fond eyes, and said, I'm sorry, did I scare you just now? Would you accept my apology gift? My family has a farm, quite big, you can come to my farm to ride horses and play games. He winked at Siddle happily, I think you will like it there. Siddle tried her best to keep her tone light in front of Ray, thank you for the invitation. But she wouldn't go. This man also gave her a kind of bad premonition. Siddle really didn't want to have anything to do with him. If she had to compare, what Hannibal brought her was the fear of the unknown when looking straight into the abyss. And this man named Mason. Siddle thought for 2 seconds and came to the conclusion that this man made her feel a strange chill. It's like the shiver when a normal person feels an ominous feeling that he will step on dog poop when walking on the road. At the same time, Siddle also discovered something. It turns out that the reason why a person becomes ridiculous the tomb really has something to do with the face. In the study, Hannibal had also smiled and winked at her, but he had a really pleasing face after all. Now that it was this man who was doing the winking action, Siddle smiled but her heart ached, thinking that this could be said to be a typical scene of teaching how to act pretentious. Mrs. Christian, before Ray and Siddle left, Mason did not forget to continue to increase his presence. If you have the chance, you must come to the manor to see me. But he did not have the chance to say more. After Mason said this, Hannibal patted his shoulder and signaled him to go into the study first. Mason appeared reluctant, but in the end he was defeated by Hannibal's gentle persuasion. When Mason entered the study, after Ray expressed her gratitude to Hannibal and was about to take Siddle away, he suddenly stopped her. "Wait a minute." Before Siddle left, the tall and handsome man stood by the bookcase in the living room, picked up a book, and smiled into Siddle's eyes. "My dear," he placed the book in Siddle's hands, "consider this a farewell gift," rolling out. "I wish you all the best in the future," Hannibal said with a smile. Siddle looked down. This was the book, 300 Nursery Rhymes. "Mom," Siddle sat in the passenger seat, watching Ray fasten her seatbelt, and couldn't help but ask, "Do you know who that Mason guy is?" She realized that Ray didn't seem to like him very much either. Ray frowned. "Are you talking about the guy I just met at Professor Lecter's house?" Siddle nodded. "He's probably a visitor to Professor Lecter." Ray turned around and sat up straight. "But the Vergers have business relations with a relative of my father. The Vergers can be considered an old tycoon family. By the way, my father doesn't like the Vergers." Ray thought for a moment and then added. As the car steadied on the road, Siddle also became silent. She was sure that she would probably never visit Hannibal Lecter again and would probably never see Mason Verger again. She had no interest in continuing to find out what kind of people these two were and why Hannibal was interested in her. Ray's mood had improved significantly after reading the psychological analysis, so Siddle felt much more at ease. She opened the nursery rhyme book that Hannibal had given her and felt a little surprised. Inside the seemingly new and exquisite leather cover, there were traces of someone flipping through it many times. Siddle flipped a page at random, and the nursery rhyme book automatically stopped at the only page with a crease. This page was full of creases, as if someone had stopped here and tried to smooth it out countless late nights. On the page was a German nursery rhyme. The Dwarfs of the Forest. There is a dwarf in the forest, calm and silent. He has a little purple coat. Tell me who is the dwarf standing alone in the forest wearing a little purple coat. There is a dwarf in the forest with only one leg. He wears a hat on his head. Tell me, who is the dwarf standing on one leg and wearing a little black hat? In the blank space of this page, there is a line of black handwriting. The person's handwriting is extremely beautiful, but the lines are not smooth, and you can see the clumps of black ink, which seems to be inconsistent with Hannibal's elegant image. Even through the page, Siddle can imagine the writer's confused look when he first put down his pen, and then he still decided to write those few lines. Siddle read each word. I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and daughters, when they are besieged and distressed by their enemies and those who seek their lives, they will eat one another's flesh. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son. What has been is what will be, there is nothing new under the sun. After this paragraph, there was another line. Whoever commits sin is a slave to sin, do not conform to the pattern of this world. These two familiar paragraphs immediately reminded Siddle. These words were both taken from the Bible. But she did not understand the relationship between the nursery rhyme and these jumbled words, nor did she understand why Hannibal gave her this book. Since she did not understand what Hannibal meant, Siddle did not intend to find out. Anyway, she would probably never see this man again. She closed the book, put it aside, and quietly looked out the window watching the scenery pass by. At this time, what Siddle did not expect was that a few years later she would not only meet Hannibal again, but also Mason Verger again. And at the same time, she also discovered a secret.